So we're getting near the end of my book. I'm just waiting for the stream. Looks like it's coming. So, Phoenix and the Falcon, tell your friends, makes a great Christmas gift. It's a little dark, but it's what it was. 400 steps of Russia would become Russia. And we met Helena's father, Michaela, who is not a nice guy. Not like my father. I have a very nice father. But, just the way I saw it, things were a little twisted. So that's how I saw it. Anyway, they're headed back to Hunnic camp. Raising clouds of dust behind them, the Huns galloped toward their camp. Lena rode along Valamir in confusion, feeling with equal passion both hate and love for her father. She remembered his laughter, and part of her still longed for his approval. Her grandfather's judgments about Michaela had been harsh from disillusionment. Lena had made excuses for him, needing to believe in her father's love. As a child, she had pretended that he had written letters and sent gifts, but that they had been lost. Her adult mind now saw him clearly, but her heart still carried the longings of the inner child. Well ahead of the Persians, they reached the encampment, filling the rows of tents with hot, lathered horses. Greeted by a welcoming roar, Attila raised his hand for silence. He spoke crisply in Hunnic, issuing commands. Women, slaves, and servants ran to the men, offering refreshment while others brought water for the horses. Attila shouted commands, and the Huns redeployed their forces within sight of the camp, yet establishing a perimeter to keep it out of range of an enemy's arrow. He organized the men in 3 separate squares, keeping Helena and Valamir with him at the core. Much time passed before they saw the Persians marching, chariots arrayed its center like a phalanx, ready for attack. Suddenly afraid, Helena glanced at Attila. Feeling her gaze, he turned to her, his eyes fierce with confidence. "Do you trust your father?" "No," she said, realizing her fear had dropped away, its intensity crumbling to dust in front of Attila's self-possession. "I thought not." He paused, his eyes narrowed. "Valamir, do you think he'll order a charge? Not with his daughter here. He cares nothing for her happiness, but he won't put her person at risk. Still, we should be ready to break camp at a moment's notice." Lena looked at Valamir, masking neither her grief nor her need. Attila's eyes sparked with amusement, but he moved his horse to the right, giving the 2 lovers an illusion of privacy. She steeled herself against inevitable sarcasm, but he ignored them and engaged Ishia in conversation. Valamir's face was stern, and his voice was abrupt. "Do you want to go with your father?" "Not at all. Perhaps once I would have accepted his life, though with regret. My grandfather reared me to think for myself and to make decisions. It could be that he did me a disservice. My father's world has no tolerance for a woman with opinions. Valamir, each day you give me freedom, and in return you have more of my heart." His smile was brilliant. The sun, well past midday, was a pale luminescence behind a cloudy haze. The chill wind brushed her face, but she laughed, warm with love. "Your opinion, Helena," Attila said shortly afterward, without a trace of irony. Her brow was etched with thought. "My father has wealth, but it does not satisfy him. He craves power as much as he can grasp. Through me, he plans a marriage to unite his blood with the Emperor's. My refusal counts for nothing, an inconvenience to surmount. Next, he'll negotiate with you." Attila paused and then shook his head. "For a price, I shall release Altir and Rodinia, but I don't sell my friends." His words filled her eyes with tears. Momentarily embarrassed, Attila was brusque. "After all, who else insults me with such style? And think of what Valamir would do. First, he would murder me and get himself killed attempting rescue. No, we'll keep things the way they are. Michaela will learn to understand one way or another. Please don't hurt him, she said. Despite everything, he is still my father. Attila nodded as if he approved, but concentrated on the Persians' rapid advance. The foot soldiers were running in order to keep up with the small cavalry, who moved forward steadily at a brisk trot. Across the empty steppes, Michaela shouted, commanding his men to halt. Thudimir, Attila said, you come with us this time, and you too, Ishiite. The five proceeded to the middle ground. Once again, Helena felt the prickling of danger along her neck. Two black horses erupted from the imperial ranks, ridden by Michaela and another man. Your pace was good, her father said to Attila as they met. We breed our horses for speed. Less than a league south, another stream comes out of the hills onto the steppes. For obvious reasons, I insist our men not be camped too close. Do you agree, Michaela? Attila asked. Yes, but I need time with my daughter. Alone. As we share our meal, she'll be with us. If you need to say anything privately to her, speak in Persian. Neither Valimir nor I will understand the language. That will be adequate. Allow me to introduce Altir's cousin, my aide, Ersemes. Michaela gestured toward Attila, who spoke in Persian to the thin younger man. Their commander, Lord Attila. With a smile, he fastened his eyes on Helena. Ersemes may introduce you to your cousin's future bride, my daughter, Helena. The Persian studied her with proprietary interest. She's well formed, Michaela. Such a woman would be a welcome addition to any man's harem. Ersemes, Helena said with a knife-edge to her voice, my father forgets that I already have a husband. At a loss for words, the Persian looked at Michaela for direction before speaking. But her father ignored him and stared at Helena, his face a study in stone. He snapped. She wed him without my permission. The marriage is invalid. I think not, father. As a widow and mother, my life is my own. He shouted, not under the rules of the Sasanian Empire or Rome. But we are not in Persia, and Rome is far away. Should we come together before a Roman magistrate, you may state your objections to him. With self-restraint, she kept her voice even. You are disobedient and a great disappointment. You are disobedient and a great disappointment as a daughter. A natural woman would be thrilled at the prospect of marriage to an emperor. What is wrong with you? She shouted back, absolutely nothing. Then she quieted her voice, speaking between clenched teeth. Altir waits. Did anybody remember to bring one of her dolls? Her father was silent. Helena's lips tightened into a frown. Does she know either of you? His nostrils flared. Yes, Helena. Altir knows me well. Her mother was my wife's sister. I'm sorry for her loss, she said, keeping her voice neutral. Has your marriage to her been fruitful, father? Ersemes rolled his eyes, indicating a trespass onto a delicate subject. She persevered despite his implicit warning. I have no brothers or sisters? You remain the only one, Michaela said. How sad for you to have no son, she said to her with the barest hint of compassion. Does Ersemes understand Greek? It's rude to speak Persian at length in front of Valimir and Attila. Ersemes shook his head emphatically. I have no need of such a barbaric tongue. Greek? Barbaric? Lena said, switching to it, thinking of the ancient but durable hatred of all things Greek by the Persians. It seemed that some attitudes haven't changed in Persia even after 1,000 years. Attila coughed, interrupting Helena and Michaela's bickering. Both turned to him, startled. Would you honor me by accepting my hospitality, Michaela? As we speak, my slaves prepare a feast, he said in his cultured Greek. That would be excellent, Michaela said, but I require 2 hostages as a guarantee of our safety. A minor formality. I understand your concern. In exchange, I need your promise that my men will be well treated. If they suffer any disrespect, I cannot answer for the consequences. Michaela nodded, narrowing his eyes as he glared at Valimir. I'd be satisfied with Prince Valimir alone, having noted his importance to you. Lena held her breath. That's impossible. Attila said, in his place I offer Prince Thudimir. Valamir's only brother. Helena felt a wave of relief. Michaela's problems would not be solved too conveniently by Valamir's accidental death. I accept him. Who will be the other? Ishiite, my favorite cousin. Done. Attila signaled to his force. A horse and rider responded, emerging from the ranks, galloping towards them. Thudimir and Ishiite, Attila said, do you agree to go as hostages to the Persians? Thudimir did not hesitate. I'm honored to serve the tribe. Ishiite seconded him. My life is yours to command. His voice like steel across stone. Valamir interrupted. Michaela, my brother is close to my heart. Warn your men that should he be mistreated, Arisames will pay with his life. Her father smiled, but it was frost on Helena's heart. Had I a brother, I feel the same. But for my daughter, I'm alone. It brings me joy that she had you as her protector. She shook her head. It is unyielding stubbornness. Father, does anyone else speak Greek? She asked, concerned that Thudimir would be unable to communicate his needs. Are we barbarians who would travel without a scribe? I don't know what you are, but Thudimir will need him to be understood. He can translate for Ishiite. Her father shrugged. It could be arranged. As Thudimir and Ishiite crossed over to Michaela, Helena ached with foreboding. She stared at Thudimir almost as if she would never see him again. His expression was veiled and gave no indication of fear. Listening to her heart, she spoke in earnest Greek. Father, you expressed great interest in grandfather's heritage, thinking it was for you. Perhaps he did leave me a power. When I summon it, the cost is great, stealing from my very being. Should Thudimir or Ishiite be harmed in any way, I'd be forced to use his legacy. The curse could affect not only you, but everyone under your command. Did I make myself clear? More than clear, daughter. Now I remember why I so rarely came home. My father never agreed with me, preferring to meddle in my affairs. You are just like him. I'll keep these two safe, not because of your threats. The Emperor would never forgive me if Arisames was lost. His words stung, unlocking turmoil. Containing her anger, she stared at his face, so reminiscent of her grandfather's. Instantly her heart was weighted by sadness. And we understand each other. As grandfather always said, your word is good when it is to your advantage. Michaela's eyes blazed and his jaw pinched with suppressed rage. His speech was measured. You'll not provoke me, daughter, on this auspicious day. Whatever your feelings, you are my blood and have obligations to me. Helena seethed. He turned from her, holding up a hand with fingers extended. In response, 5 men galloped their horses toward their leader. He spoke to them at length, detailing the care of the 2 hostages. Helena listened intently, with her mouth set in a grim line. When he had finished, she asked, "Where is the translator?" "With my men." "Attila, with your permission," Helena said, "I'd like to see and hear the scribe for myself." "You don't believe me?" her father asked, his voice nasal with temper. "I mean no insult, but it would give me peace of mind to see this man with my own eyes." "It'll please me as well, Michaela," Attila said. Nodding curtly, her father spoke to one of his men, succinct in his instruction to bring the scribe. Immediately the soldier obeyed, urging his horse into a run. While they waited, the silence was pronounced. Finally, Arisames pointed to the 2 men on horseback. "See, they come." Expertly, the soldier brought his mount to a smooth halt, but the translator could not bring his horse under control until it almost reached the Hunnic line. As the Huns shouted with laughter, Michaela's face flushed with anger. "He's a scribe," he said, making an obvious statement. At a walk, the man rode his large black horse on a short rein to his commander, his narrow face ashen with fear. Attila ignored Michaela's embarrassment and kept a straight face. "Is he yours to sell?" "Possibly, if the price agreed with me." "Excellent. We'll barter," Attila said, smiling. The translator bowed his head to Michaelia. How may I serve you? He asked in Persian. Speak to this man in Greek, Alexander, he said. You should be able to speak your own language, despite your evident lack of skill on a horse. The man was effusive. Greetings! It brings me pleasure to speak to you in the most cherished tongue of the Roman Empire. I'm satisfied, Helena said, interrupting the Greek's enthusiastic flow of words. Please accept my thanks. Very well, Michaelia said, frowning. He gave his men further instructions about the hostages, along with orders to set up camp for the night. As Thudimir and Ishiite followed their camp escort along with the scribe back to the Persian line, Valimir shouted, May Mithras be with you always, Bevian. Nonchalantly, his brother glanced back with a wave. Meanwhile, the Greek attached himself to the blonde Goth, chatting non-stop, taking full advantage of the opportunity to speak his native language. Thudimir at first ignored him, but then turned his head and engaged him in a conversation. Soon they were out of earshot. Right alongside Attila, Michaela voiced his disgust to Helena in Persian. With his very presence on the earth, the scribe makes a mockery of his namesake. She answered in the same language, finding its rhythm seductive and comforting. What, Alexander? Helena said. She remembered playing with her father's toy horse and chariot, creating intricate sagas about her hero, Alexander the Great. Her voice was wistful. Did grandfather make him come alive for you too? He made history magical. I could almost smell the flames under Sikander the Destroyer, after Sikander the Destroyer set fire to the great library. Grandfather was good to me. Michaela's smile was calculated, its warmth forced. Bothistran would be proud of you, Helena, but he'd be ashamed by your stubborn refusal to honor your duty. Unblinking, she held her father's eyes, her heart sore. She switched to Greek. You care nothing for me, except for as a commodity, for trade. Ambition fills you, stripping away any love you could have felt for the flesh of your flesh, the bone of your bone. But it's your loss, not mine. He kept to Persian, disregarding her Greek. I only want what's best for you, Lena. You deserve better than these barbarians. Valimir's voice cut the air between them. Michaelia, enjoy the time you have with your daughter before your past part. Nothing has been settled. You are wrong. I stand by Helena's decision. Respect it or dance with my sword. Mocking the warning, Michaelia raised his eyebrow. His smile was bleak. We shall see, Prince Valimir. Attila shouted, Come, Michaelia, show me how well you Persians breed horses. We ride. Pivoting his black stallion, Attila charged the Hunnic line at a run. The waiting horsemen shifted position, creating a narrow pathway. The rest of Attila's small entourage cantered behind him through the channel. As Lena glanced back, it closed as if it had never been. The Hunnic force kept vigil, watching the Persian force move southeast away from the camp. When they arrived at Attila's headquarters, slaves ran to tend to their horses. Inside, a small feast waited, set on 3 low tables. Altair was nowhere to be seen. Helena understood Attila's strategy. Her absence would force Mikhail to inquire about the child and subtly tip the balance of power towards the Hun. With a smooth but imperious gesture, Attila indicated places on the rug before his simple chair. Despite Helena's intentions, her father managed to seat himself beside her and blocked her view of Valimir. Instantly she remembered his scent. It brought back the memory of the sunlit house in Constantinople, filled with her grandfather's quiet presence. She turned to her father and spoke in Greek. It's been a long time since you were so near. Michaela's eyes flashed with torment, but he kept his expression impassive. His voice, however, betrayed him. You remind me of his mother, he replied in Persian. She answered in Greek. What was her name? Grandfather would not speak of her. He was shocked. I named you for your mother, Helena. I never imagined that you would not know, he said, keeping to Persian. You consider her unworthy of your ancient bloodlines. Did he tell you? She asked in Greek. Many times. With your intolerance for my marriage, you walk in grandfather's shadow. It's different. You're a woman. She hated his smug expression and his unyielding belief in the superiority of men. A man poured wine. Helena's gaze followed the serving hand to its owner's face and saw Karatapan. Betraying no hint of recognition, he seemed like just another servant. When his profile obscured the left side of his face from the Persian's, he quickly blinked his eye. Pressed in a smile, Helena glanced at Attila, his face alive with mischief. For a moment, Arisames studied Karatapan suspiciously, but then dismissed him, perhaps unable to imagine a Persian in such low company. Attila smiled. We questioned Rodinia at length, but despite our persistence, we learned little. I think she's shielding someone at court who knows poisons. Michaelia nodded. Your theory has merit. We have the time and the means to discover the truth. Would you be so kind as to present Altair? But of course, it is my pleasure to offer a small service to the Sassanian Empire. And you shall have your reward. We will also require the woman, Rodinia. Attila paused, his lips deep with regret. She is another matter. Explain yourself. The return of the child is a gesture of friendship between two nations. But for Rodinia, we need payment. And just what would you want? That would depend, Michaelia, on your appreciation for Altair's safe return. Indeed, her father said, and fell silent. Unconcerned, Attila chewed his meal with enjoyment, smacking his lips. Arisames picked at his food, eyeing the hum with disgust. Suddenly he spoke to Persian to Karatapan. More wine! Karatapan's face was blank. Arisames relaxed, his mouth transformed by a condescending grin. You, he said, tossing a chunk of meat at Karatapan's cheek to attract his attention. He gestured to his glass. Wine! Responding to the pantomime, Karatapan obeyed with alacrity. I could have sworn that slave was Persian, Arisames murmured to Michaelia. He doesn't understand a word of our language. He appears to be a simpleton. Lena's father frowned. The man's no fool. Watch your tongue. Arisames blew out with exasperation. You are too cautious. Looking for spies behind every curtain. What's our tear? Why haven't they brought her in? Michaelia glared at him. You talk too much. We wait. Suddenly Helena had had enough of them. She stood abruptly and repositioned herself on Valamir's right. With him as a shield between Michaelia and herself, she felt safe. Valimir wrapped his arm around her shoulders and whispered in Gothic, Don't worry, Helena. All will be well. Compared to Michaelia and Arisames' fine garments and golden armor, Valamir's clothing was coarse and uncivilized. Yet, as she met his eyes, nothing had changed. Their lives were joined, linked in a way that reached beyond words, apart from time and space. She wanted to be alone with him, sequestered in their tent, as if reading her mind. Valamir's breath was a caress to her ear. Later, he said. Her father interrupted, his voice percussive as a drum. What happened to your hand? It was broken. I have training. Let me examine it. Reluctantly, she extended her arm. Reaching across Valimir, Michaelia unwrapped the bandages carefully and pressed gently on the one bone, then another. Does this hurt? He asked. She shook her head, both repelled and fascinated at his expertise. Move your fingers. She obeyed, but found that too much motion brought pain. Does that hurt? Just a little. Your hand is all but healed. Slowly he turned it over and saw her palm. What is this? It looks like a knife wound. She shook her head. It doesn't matter. Still holding her hand, Michaelia's eyes were zealous and insistent. He blinked as if coming back to himself and let her go. Who was your physician? His work was excellent, worthy of a Persian. Not wanting to betray Karatapan's masquerade, she was silent. Valimir cut through her confusion. Tell him, Karatapan deserves praise. Father, this is Karatapan. He was Valamir's tutor. Michaelia smiled broadly and spoke in Persian. Thank you for saving my daughter's hand. Because of you, I shall have use of it, but it will stiffen if not encouraged to move. It's time for all wrappings to be removed. Karatapan brought his palms together and half bowed from the waist, but did not respond in Persian, maintaining his charade. What about Altair? Michaelia asked. But of course, Attila said, nothing would give me more pleasure than to see you two reunited. He clapped his hands. A Hun emerged from behind, his black hair creased with braids, a short sword at his side. A diminutive woman followed, clad in a long blue dress. Her white hand held Altir's. The child, smiling, prattled happily in Persian to a new friend who did not understand a word. But the young woman's eyes were warm, and she held her finger to her lips, encouraging Altir to be quiet. The child stood still, bewildered at her change of surroundings. Then her eyes lit up when she saw Karatapan. "Look! Attila's wife's made me my own doll. Isn't she beautiful?" she exclaimed in Persian. "Altir," Helena said, "greet your visitors." The child stared at Michaelia, then gasped and shouted, "Uncle Misha!" Forgetting Karatapan, she rushed to Helena's father, burrowing her chest in her face in his chest. "You came!" Helena watched, her heart ached, not for Altir, but for the years when she had been a child, longing for the comfort in her father's arms. She blinked back tears and looked away. Attila bowed his head formally to his wife. Taking her gently by the hand, he spoke softly as he ushered her from the tent. The guards walked a respectful 6 paces behind her. Returning to his guest, Attila studied Altir, nestled in Michaelia's lap, but kept his face a blank mask. Despite the child's embrace, Michaelia preserved his dignity. His lips were taut with arrogance. His Greek was clipped, almost strident. "You've been good to Altir. I offer my thanks. My wife spoiled her. They'll miss her." "This is my friend Helena," Altir said to Michaelia. "This is my friend Helena," Altir said to Michaelia, smiling at Helena. "She's very kind." "Well, I have a surprise for you," Michaelia said. "She's the daughter I thought I'd lost." "She's the girl you talk about?" "She's all grown up." "So it would seem," he said to himself. His voice became harsh. "Lord Attila, I offer all that we carry with us. It's not enough. Unless you wish to travel to Ishtar, I can do no more." Attila's fist were at his waist. "Send your aid for your gifts of thanks, and we shall see. My men will provide him an escort. While we wait for his return, we'll discuss Virginia. I'll allow him re-entry to the camp with no more than 10 guards. When our negotiations are complete, we'll exchange hostages." "Done." Michaelia was curt as he told the other Persian his requirements. Arasami spoke in a whisper. "Are you mad? You don't plan to give these barbarians everything. They have no appreciation for quality." "It was at command. We're in no danger, and the price is modest. Think of our reward for rescuing Altir. Bring the scribe now. Attila has need of him. He'll sweeten the pot." "Alexander?" "Arasami, you tire my patience. Do as I command." The aide stood, dusting off imaginary specks of dust from his clothes. "Very well. Not having to see his simpering face is almost worth what we are about to give away." Michaelia looked at him sternly, his voice sharp with vehemence. "Remember, I remain with Altir. Don't do anything foolish." Arasami swept his brown hair from his face. "I'll not disappoint you. Just keep to your orders. Anything less or more, I'll have your head, royal connections or not." "Yes, Michaelia." He almost sounded like a soldier. "Excellent," Michaelia said in Greek to Attila. "Arasami has his orders." Attila clapped his broad hands twice, loudly. 2 armed Huns answered the summons. When Attila spoke to them in terse Hunnic, they took positions on either side of Arasami's. One gestured toward the door with his sword, and the Persian suddenly looked ill. I think that they'll want you to follow them," Michaelia said, with a cold smile. Arasami glanced nervously at his companions. "Until I return, Michaelia. Until then, walk in the light." Once he had departed, Michaelia's eyes met Attila's. "The man's a fool." The Hun was serious. "I found that even a fool has its uses, given the correct circumstances." "Then you have discovered a truth known only to a few," Michaelia said. "But to another matter, one that presses on my heart, Lord Attila, I petition your help. My daughter Helena must remain with me. Being a woman, she does not know what is best for her. Through the marriage I have planned, she will create a great alliance between my family and the Emperor himself. But she spurns my offer, refusing to leave the man she wed without my permission. If you command Prince Valimir to release her, I'm certain that he would obey." "Why would the Emperor take as his wife a woman who is no longer a virgin, only half Persian, not even royal? This makes no sense, Michaelia." "They want the bloodlines of my father. He always insisted that he was descended from the prophet Zarathustra himself. This has been confirmed by the imperial historians. Lucifer possessed certain powers. Some have called it a legacy. The emperor wants it. Helena, the last of my father's line, can endow their children with the prophet's gift. Why don't you just father another child? Have you suffered a wound that prevents it? My wife, cousin to the emperor, has yet to give birth to a live infant. You confine yourself to one woman? There have been others, but they've suffered strange illnesses and passed away. Thinking of Maga and the younger rival who had died mysteriously after catching Cansbar's eye, Lena thought immediately of poison. Valamir interrupted. Michaelia forgets. Helena's my wife. To take her, he'll have to go through me first. Attila laughed, and that's the crux of the problem. You see, Michaelia, if you draw Valamir's blood, we'll have to kill you. It's our way. Find a way to make another child. Discipline your wife. It's a man's right to share his seed. I need Helena. She carries my father's teachings. Unless Helena wishes otherwise, she stays, Attila said. Her father glared at her, not angrily, but with hunger. In Thrace, the blood ties are complex. Perhaps Valamir has married his cousin unknowingly. I've forgotten the name of my wife's village, but she mentioned it was near the northern border. She came to Constantinople as a girl of 10 or 12. Her father had left his land, wearied by defending it against the Goths. He became a goldsmith of great renown. But the finest jewel in his shop was the woman who would become my wife. He added in a whisper, Helena, wouldn't you like to learn more about your mother? My father was wrong about Thrace. Even Socrates praised their abilities in medicine and healing. I will teach you what you long to know. Mutely, Helena shook her head and squeezed Valamir's hand hard. Attila frowned. Michaelia, I wonder if you relinquished a beloved wife. His body was rigid and his breathing was shallow. You interfere, Attila, he said in a terse voice. It's my right. Valamir is my second in command. Can you be reconciled to Lena's choice of husband? Never. Unless you want to taint our negotiations about Rodinia, the subject is closed. Michaelia tightened his jaw. For the moment, but it's not finished. He stared at Helena. If she comes to regret her chosen life, would you send me word? Yes. I hope that day never comes. I'd miss her. You have the courage to speak their hearts before me. Michaelia glanced at her. You compliment my daughter's courage. Yes. You didn't answer, Attila. Would you allow your wife to return to her family? Helena asked. No, it is not the Persian way, said her father. Then why do you expect otherwise from my husband? In exchange for your freedom, I offer him a fortune. You insult both me and your daughter, Valamir said. Is she a horse to be traded at market? Show her respect, and you may come to visit us. Perhaps we'll present you with a grandchild. Michaelia's face transformed, reminding Helena of a wild animal trapped and desperate. Yet watching him, she was unafraid. Despite her earlier misgivings, she yearned to help him. Father, I will always love you, even though our lives keep us apart. And grandfather, despite his bitter words, searched for you until the end. She said, speaking from her heart. If you truly love me, Helena, you'd obey my wishes. You can't begin to understand your importance to me. Until Helena ground her teeth, hating his expediency. Altair interrupted. Why is Uncle Misha so angry? He is not getting his way. Show me your new doll while we wait for your cousin's return. As Helena admired Altair's rag doll, dressed in a multitude of colorful fabrics, she felt her father's eyes. She ignored them. She had offered no conditions for her love. In return, he had demanded her soul. When Helena placed the imperial pendant under Altair's neck, when Helena placed the imperial pendant around Altair's neck, the little girl beamed. I knew you wouldn't forget, she whispered. The tent was quiet. The scratch pan cleared away the remnants of the meal. The fire burned brightly in the hearth. Altair yawned. As the child rubbed her eyes, Lena spoke to her father in Greek. As I said, once you are a grandfather, let me tell you about my son. Without waiting for a reply, she described Mikhail in loving detail. For once her father did not interrupt. With somber eyes, he listened silently. as if to give her privacy. Attila and Valamir spoke quietly to each other, not breaking the soliloquy. Her gentle flow of words did not stop until a slave brought the news that Ersames had returned. And that's chapter 27. So we'll have to see how it ends up. What happens? Does her father get his way? Who knows? Anyway, think of my book. Forgot to put my mic. I hope my sound was okay. I have my little microphone. I forgot to put it on. But apparently, sound projects pretty well to it. So think of my book. Tell people about it. Hope you have a good week.